History is replete with examples of redefined morality. The throwing off of God-imposed restraints on humankind and a rejecting of the sacredness of human life always comes following the rejection of truth. The demonic experimentation of the Nazi regime and their satanic intent to create a super breed of mankind, which they defined in their evil minds, still stands in history books nearly unequaled in all civilization. And sadly, it seems that this remembrance has been nearly scrubbed from modern memory and discarded in terms of application today to law and medicine, to research and morality. And with that, I welcome you to Stand in the Gap. I'm Sam Rohrer, and I'll be joined in just a moment by Pastor Isaac Crocket for part 2 of our 2-part series on the theme of bioethics. Our title, Redefining Bio-Ethics, the implications of medicine without morality. And for those who throw off God, the author of truth and definer of morality, there is nothing short of an assured all-out race to the bottom. The God-less elite who view themselves as God place no value in others. And time after time, those embracing this mentality have proceeded to kill, to torture, or to maim those who they deem to be less worthy. The atheist, the Marxist, the globalist, and the communist ideologies of the past and present stand as prime examples that should instruct all of us today. And in this strange day, precipitated, or I should say perhaps catapulted by the 2020 COVID assault and panic policies we've seen, truth has been thrown down when it comes to law and justice, medicine, education and media, research and bioethics. And predictably, an unrestrained and lawless attitude of people generally, led by many in positions of leadership who have intentionally rejected God as creator and judge, and the Bible as the source of unchanging truth, continues to develop. The result is a culture unrestrained, not subject to any law except the one they create in their own minds. And the real dilemma occurs when the pulpits in the church related moral leaders also look to other places than God's Word for moral guidance and the defining of ethics. And these times should cause us all to back up and ask some serious questions about whether we can even survive in a lawless, moral-less culture. So as we continue today in part 2, bioethics and the implications of medicine without morality, I'd like to invite back right now to our program our special guest, Dr. Marilyn Singleton, board-certified anesthesiologist, immediate past president of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. And Dr. Singleton is not only a medical doctor by training, but also one trained in constitutional and administrative law, having received her degree from UC of Berkeley. And with that, I welcome back to the program right now Dr. Marilyn Singleton. Marilyn, thank you for being back with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me back.
Well, I'm glad you're back with us. Last week we talked about, really gave some examples of where technology and medicine have legitimately made advancements. In this program, we're going to start focusing somewhere now what happens when you throw off moral truth, as you said, and as you say, science gets ahead of morality. When I first talked with you some weeks ago, you had just written an article that you had obtained, that you incited, I guess entitled, Humanized Mice, where you said, quote, freshly obtained aborted fetal tissue is being used to create humanized mice. That caught my attention, and it's what's driven our discussion today. I want you to expand upon what that was that created that article that you wrote, and if anything has further happened as an offshoot of that experimentation with humanizing mice. Very intriguing.
Well, actually, it's gone on for several years where fetal tissue is used. The cells are used to grow human organs on mice. Fetal skin cells have been used, and it actually is kind of ghoulish because it's part of the scalp has been engrafted onto mice. And so presumably it's so we can learn about skin diseases. And now with COVID, one of the things we're seeing now, and that was the most recent article that I had commented on, that lungs were being grown onto mice. So, and it was outside of the mouse, and it was so they could study the effects of COVID. Well, the thing that's somewhat bizarre about that, trying to look at a lung that's growing on the surface of a body, whether it be a mouse or any other person's body, is not the same as on the inside. So physiologically, that doesn't really make 100% sense. And we know that the hamsters actually get COVID. So why not test it on a hamster? What is the necessity for taking these cells and growing them on a mouse? So there's a lot of things you wonder. It's easier, but just because something's easier, does that mean we should do it?
So you just touched on one that would appear to be strange, but ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We'll come back and we're going to share some more examples of things that now actually really go beyond. And as we shared in the last program, Dr. Singleton shared that in the last 10 years, there have been astronomical strides in, well, gains. Well, maybe there are not so many gains in technology and medicine and research. We'll give some examples when we come back.
Truth, flexible or permanent? The Bible, ancient history, or powerfully relevant? Culture, a reflection of enlightenment or warning signs? The pastor, commentator, or frontline combatant? Every day, American Pastors Network speaks to these questions where and when they matter. With hundreds of affiliate radio stations nationwide, a website and mobile app screening today's headlines through the twin lenses of the Bible and the Constitution, educating, informing, equipping. This is the American Pastors Network. The time is now to stand in the gap for truth.
Welcome back to Stand in the Gap, and this is part two, a two-part series looking at medicine without morality, where the title is Redefining Bio-Ethics, the Implications of Medicine Without Morality. If you want to find out more about this, if you didn't see our first part, we were also interviewing Dr. Marilyn Singleton for that as well. And Dr. Singleton has a background not only as a medical doctor, but also as an attorney. And so you could watch that. She's been on our Stand in the Gap Today, our radio program as well. You can find those archives. You could also go to her website, www.marilynsingletonmdjd.com, and find out more information about what we're talking about. But right now, I want to ask you, Dr. Singleton, you brought up some of these strange phenomenon. You talked about this idea that they can actually, take pieces of human cells and put it into, animals. I guess there's been the whole mapping of the genome mapping of human, genomes and DNA, and then other animals. And so it seems like in the last number of years, this has gotten to be so advanced and almost common where they're mixing these things. You said they were able to grow lungs on mice. Again, they can do it, but should they do it? And is it really even practical? Is it even helpful to do this? These little snippets, and they kind of cut and paste. It just seems like nowadays they've mixed technology and medicine so they can cut and paste different parts of DNA with this animal. And I guess when they take human DNA and they insert it into an animal, this term is referred to as a chimera. I think I'm saying that right, Sam. You and I were talking about this, but a chimera. And again, this used to be unheard of, but in the last 5-10 years especially, it's becoming prevalent to the point that even in Japan, they've approved a few years ago, I think 2019, approved that they can actually, they gave permission for animal-human hybrids to be born. That used to be forbidden, but some places, like Japan, are allowing that. So could you maybe talk to us a little bit about what's going on when we go down this kind of strange, lack of morality with medicine?
Well, and it's chimera. And that's where you actually, and there's actually natural chimeras. There's human beings that can be chimeras. That's a whole nother topic. People who have actually two different genetic materials, and they can be split kind of half side one color, half side the other color. Very interesting. But that's naturally how it just sort of happens. But this is scientists doing this on purpose, where they're taking at the very early stage, where it's before implantation, and putting in the cell from the different organism. In this case, it's implanting human cells into, it's called a blastocyst. That's before the implantation, putting human cells, fetal cells that can turn into anything, and put them in an animal. And the purpose is supposedly where this animal will then grow the human organ. So you'll have a kidney, a liver, maybe some immune tissue of some sort. Now, this problem in Japan of saying, okay, we're going to allow these things to come all the way through to gestation, you'd have to do that in order to grow the organ. As it is now, people realize how controversial it is, and it's very interesting that some of these modifications there are going to test the brains of the rats or whatever animal was used to put these human cells into. And if more than 30% of the brain cells of the rat show human tissue, they're going to stop the experiment. But the whole thing is really pretty darn creepy. And I realize we need organs for transplantation. It's a helpful thing, and it's something we talked about before. One of the great advances in medicine was organ transplantation. But this seems to me to go one step beyond, because what's next? And if I could just digress for one hot minute, that now they have actually had a male rat give birth. A male rat has given birth. I say that twice because, and yes, the rat had a uterus transplant, then they had blood transfusions from a pregnant female rat, so they would get all the hormones that normally a woman produces, and then they delivered a live rat baby by C-section.
And Marilyn, I mean, I think surely people who are watching us right now says, wow. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I bear in mind, we're bringing up this discussion because we want this discussion to be had. Right now, it's not taking place across America. And Marilyn, you've been in the space. So Isaac brought up this one piece of human and animal DNA. He didn't talk about it, but there's RNA, there's DNA. They're doing chromosomal splits. They're doing gene splicing, that it's called, and actually mixing animal and human to animal, which is what you're talking about, which then raises a lot of these issues. But let me go to one other one, because the COVID panic policies that have erupted have resulted in a vaccine, which is not a vaccine. And our purpose is not to be talking about that issue today so much, but as I said, the COVID policies have really exposed a lot of experimentation that has been going on. That's why I wanted to bring this up here. But within what is called the mRNA approach to this vaccine, it's often referred to by those who do know what it's talking about, called gene therapy. It's actually an introduction of technology, but human elements put into technology, and then the technology is put into the human body. So that's what I want to get your discussion about right now. You not only have animal and human mixing at the very, very basic chromosomal elements, you now have this inclusion of technology in cells, mRNA, and delivered into the body, which are making changes in the human body driven by technology. So speak to us on that a little bit, because it's a little different area, but it's still kind of out there in the same way. Talk to us about that, please.
Well, it is. And what you're saying is, again, it's something that could be very useful. But we come into what we've been talking about really for the last two shows is, where do we as individuals come into all this? Do we have informed consent? Have we really had it explained to us if we get this medication that everyone, the government, giving prizes, money, so you will get this medication? Do people really understand what it means to have messenger RNA inserted into your body? You may say, that's fine. It's supposed to be dissipated. What if it doesn't dissipate? Nobody brings that up. What happens if it travels all through your body instead of just in your arm where the shot was? All these things need to be explained, and that takes us back to what we said rule number 1 of Nuremberg Code was informed consent. And we can't say that enough. Informed consent, that's all we want. And the ability to say no. Once you know, you can say, sure, that's fine with me. And we need to know what the new vaccines are made of. Some use fetal stem cell lines, some that are ready to be approved do not. People need to know that. People need to be given that choice. So that gives us to our rule of transparency and openness. And we cannot be coerced. And that kind of brings all that together, that we're seeing a level of coercion that I have never seen in my medical career.
Well, talking about transparency and coercion, you've talked about this some on the radio program and even on our previous TV program about things being tested, whether it be vaccines or certain treatments. For example, maybe they were tested on men, but then given to women without testing. Or, in my family, my mom, her family's from Europe. My wife is from India. She's Indian, and so my kids, take after a lot of her genetic traits. And there's a lot of groups that worry with vaccines because some vaccines were tested only on certain ethnic populations, and they have not more of an adverse effect on other ones. And so this idea of eugenics and coercion coming together, I'd like to get your opinion on that and maybe even some of the history of that we should be aware of.
Eugenics has a long history in America. It started back in the 1850s here in America and really took off. Very well-known people were eugenicists. David Starr Jordan, who started Stanford, and whole lists of people got on that eugenics bandwagon. And in 1907, Indiana actually had a forced sterilization law passed. After that one passed, multiple states passed them. And in 1927, there was a famous Supreme Court case by a very revered justice, Oliver Wendell Holmes, a progressive justice, made this decision that goes down in infamy. And mind you, the decision still stands, where a woman finally sued against her forced sterilization. And he decided, as he put it, 3 generations of imbeciles are more than enough. Sadly, she wasn't an imbecile. All she was a prostitute, or actually a child of a prostitute. And this can happen. And this is what's so stunning to me. Again, this is where he decided the law, but clearly it wasn't moral. And the thing that's shocking to me, that it took until 1981 for the last forced sterilization in the United States to occur. And these sterilizations, one of the famous terms of them was a Mississippi appendectomy, where women went in supposedly for an appendectomy and they were sterilized. And so when I say 1981, maybe that's the last one on the books, but who knows if they've been continued under other guises.
Marilyn, we are about out of time, excuse me, but I want to ask you to, in the last minute here, apply the most significant moral principles, maybe something you need to restate what you've already stated, that should stick in the minds of our viewers right now, that should guide them and as we think about morality and medicine.
Okay. again, I can't say it enough. Informed consent. And as listeners, you demand to be informed and know that you can just say no. You can't be coerced into doing anything. You have to hold your immediate doctor as well as the researchers accountable. We have to know the conflicts of interest, and certainly something, whole nother discussion, that we're discovering now, the conflicts of interest with the COVID vaccines. And this has to be exposed. And the only people who can really expose it is us, the individual, because you have to ask and you have to say no. Don't just go along to get along. It's your right to know what the risks are to you as an individual, and be told all of these things before you consent to anything.
Dr. Marilyn Singleton, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to say goodbye to you right now, and we're going to break away, and then we'll come back, ladies and gentlemen, for a conclusion in just a moment.
Stand in the Gap is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV, positively different television.
Welcome back to Stand in the Gap, and we're coming to the conclusion of a two-part series about bioethics, redefining bioethics, the implications of medicine without morality. And Sam, I'm just going to go to you. This has been a very interesting couple of programs we've had. I've listened to the radio programs with Dr. Singleton, but to have her on here discussing some of these implications, it's frightening, it's a little creepy, some of the things going on. And then so much of it just feels like, have we learned anything from history? Because World War II, Nazi Germany, it's not that distant of history. But biblically, there have been Christians that have gone along with these things, unfortunately. But fortunately, it's been people with the biblical worldview that stood up and said, no, this cannot continue as it is. What are the biblical principles we should take away from such a moving program like this?
Isaac, we could go into a whole day seminar,
There we go.
but we're not going to. But I thought of four things I'd like to mention that'll tie into what Dr. Singleton said, because she said ultimately at the end, from her medical and legal perspective, is informed consent. Now, what she didn't say, but she did say, is the fact that there is a choice. God has made us all with the ability to choose. And with choice comes consequences. We choose wisely, we have blessing. We choose unwisely, we can have dramatic, terrible results. But I thought of these things that I would put down, ladies and gentlemen. I'll suggest these. When thinking about morality in medicine, we can start no better place than to start with God. Understand that God is a God of order. God is predictable. God is certain. Satan is the antithesis of God. He is a liar. He is disorder. He is division. He is chaos. But God, in the creation, He made us, and He made male, and He made female. They are not to be mixed. They're different. He made animal and human. They're not to be mixed. He made right and wrong. They're not to be mixed. He created order and disorder. He created order, and when you throw that out, you have disorder. Isaac, the second thing is that there's a distinction between God and man. Ladies and gentlemen, if we think that we are God, we're in trouble. God created, there's an order. Thirdly, there's a distinction between animals and mankind. God created man in His image. He created animals, and He told, go out and multiply after your kind. No mixing is permitted. And the last thing is understand that from the beginning, man has always attempted to replace God. We've attempted to make ourselves God. And when we do that, then we can make up our own rules. God gave us His moral truth, not to penalize us, not to punish us, but to protect us. and to move us into a relationship with Him. And that's really what a biblical worldview is all about. And that's really, if we could put that across right now, God has His rules, follow them. Follow them for our blessing. Safety, for our safety, for our good. And when we choose those things, the consequences are blessing. That's what we would encourage as you think about this issue of medicine and morality. Well, thanks for watching us today. Communicate to us, partner with us in prayer and finances, and we'll see you back next week.